Hello, my name's Bev and I'm the author of the book Please Eat, A Mother's Struggle to Free Her Teenage Son from Anorexia, which describes our family's battle with the deadly eating disorder, anorexia nervosa, which my teenage son Ben developed back in 2009 when he was just 15 years old. Welcome to chapter 1, which is called Wired Up to Machines. This chapter covers an incident that happened at the end of January 2010 when we'd been waiting for treatment for my son's eating disorder for about 4 or 5 months, which was a terrible, terrible time, as you'll find out as I go through the other chapters in my book. This chapter 1, it kind of jumps forward to the January to give you a background of basically where we were at this particular time, and then in the other chapters I take you back to the beginning and I talk about the eating disorder as it developed, about the treatment, and about Ben's subsequent recovery, which wasn't immediate by any stretch of the imagination. But anyway, let's start with this chapter. Chapter 1, Wired Up to Machines. It's the 26th of January 2010, 6 months after 16-year-old Ben's anorexia first began to emerge. I'm sitting at the PC screen in the back bedroom of my house where I work as a freelance copywriter, or to be more accurate, where I am fighting a losing battle to keep my business afloat while my only child hurtles downhill to goodness only knows where. This brief period, the hour or so between dropping Ben off at the school bus stop and the first frantic text I get as he struggles with another day at school, is the only time I really get to myself. But it's not as if I can switch off. Usually I'm reeling from the latest anorexia-fueled meltdown in the fight to get Ben to school. More often than not, I have my head in my hands, tears streaming down my face, hands fumbling for the tissues, wondering for the millionth time when or even if this nightmare will end. By 9:30 a.m. I'm already jittery. These days I even take the phone into the bathroom with me. I can expect the first text around 9:30 a.m. Sometimes it's even earlier. And sometimes it isn't Ben who gets in touch first, but Sheila, the school nurse, concerned about the latest crisis Ben's got himself into. Like the day I leave an over-distraught Ben at the bus stop, but he fails to turn up for registration. Sheila calls to ask if he's made his way home because no one remembers seeing him on the bus, and he isn't answering his mobile. My blood freezes as I search for my car keys. Visions of driving up and down every single street in the city searching for Ben, whose behaviour has become terrifyingly erratic. But Sheila calls back to say it's okay, they've found him crouching beneath a stairwell in the science block, sobbing his heart out. She's got him in the medical centre and is attempting to calm him down. I breathe a sigh of relief. All the time Ben suddenly downs his knife and fork, leaves his plate of food untouched and strides out of the school canteen, unable to face eating lunch with his friends. The head of year charges after him and intercepts him en route to the river at the foot of the playing fields. A distraught Ben is returned to the safety of the medical centre, where he spends the next hour or so talking with Sheila while I make my way to school to pick him up. Sometimes it's a frantic three-way communication between Ben, Sheila and me. First, Ben texts me from where he's barricaded himself in the boys' toilets like a frightened rabbit. I phone Sheila, who attempts to entice Ben out. She calls me to say Ben's calmed down and is resting in the medical centre, or, more likely, he's in a terrible state. Maybe it would be better if I took him home. Or it might be a text from Ben, who can't stop fretting about something I've planned for our evening meal. The burger's far too fatty. Do you know how much fat there is in coconut milk? Worries like this can dominate the whole day until they explode into a massive screaming, swearing, head bashing, and the sound that never fails to chill me to the bone, a low-pitched wail, like an animal in pain. Or the voice I've come to refer to as the demon, the voice of anorexia, the voice that isn't Ben's, but which he uses whenever the anorexia is in control. It's slow, chillingly low, and completely monotone. It's a voice I'd never heard before Ben succumbed to anorexia, and I pray I will never hear again. Today it's Sheila who contacts me first. Ben's with her in the medical centre, but he doesn't look well. His heart is beating at around half the rate it's supposed to, and his pulse is uneven. She'd like the hospital to see him. I grab my car keys and rush into school. Ben's waiting for me in the car park. Sideways on, I'm painfully aware that there's nothing of him. Straight up and down, without any definition. A million light years away from the shapely calves and rugby-playing thighs of just 12 months before. Remember when we used to joke that Ben was made from concrete? Ben hasn't played rugby since October. If he played rugby now, he'd snap in half. He turns round to face the car, and I can't bear to look at the dark rings around his eyes set into the skull that looks far too big for his frail body. He climbs into the car silently, staring at the floor, his face expressionless. No greeting, no conversation. The anorexia has sucked every happy, positive emotion from his soul. He is completely numb. And when he isn't numb, he's threatening to end his life or run away. I put my foot down and drive the silent Ben towards the hospital on the eastern side of the city. One mention of heart problems and pulse rate of 29, and we're spirited past the usual hospital queue. In a flash, Ben's lying on a trolley and being hooked up to an ECG machine. Medical people are striding to and fro, checking the screen. I'm analysing their body language for clues, because I can't read the expressions on their faces. A doctor walks up to me with a clipboard. Is there any history of heart problems in the family? My great-grandma died of a heart attack back in 1917. Does this count? Is there anything else that might have sparked this off? Sport, maybe? Well, yes, Ben's very sporty. Aha, that makes sense. Athletes' hearts tend to be so fit and fine-tuned that the pulse rate can slow right down. Well, yes, for the past 6 months or so, Ben has been doing some kind of high-intensity sport or exercise every single day of the week, usually several times a day. So I guess in a bizarre way you could say he is an athlete. But, as I tell the doctor, Ben has anorexia. He's had it for the past 6 months. Or at least that's when the signs of the illness first began to show. All this exercise, together with a massive reduction in food intake, is the reason why he's lost 1/4 of his body weight since then. My gut instinct tells me that it's the anorexia that's brought us here, not the fact that Ben is a budding Olympian. His waif-like body looks virtually devoid of muscle these days, and isn't the heart a muscle? The doctor writes something down and then takes some needles out of their sterilised wrappings to take blood. He attempts to get a needle into Ben's vein, and then attempts again. Soon Ben's arm is like a pincushion as the stubborn veins refuse to rise to the surface. Meanwhile, his pulse is still registering at 29 BPM. Something tells me it shouldn't be this low. It's ridiculously low, abnormally low, dangerously low. A senior doctor arrives, rolls up his sleeves, and finally, carefully, oh so carefully, manages to get the needle into Ben's arm. It's a huge needle, Such a big needle for such a stick-thin arm. By now the tears are streaming down Ben's thin white face. He looks terrified. He's had some pretty hair-raising things done in his time, what's with ingrowing toenails, several teeth outs and various bone fractures. But this is the first time I've seen him cry in public since he was a small child. A zillion thoughts rush through my head, from I must ring his dad to this is my only child and this is his only heart. I gaze at him, my beautiful son, looking frightened and bewildered, and so very young, these days much younger than his 16 years. How the heck did my big burly rugby-playing son end up here? How did we get from there, charging up and down the rugby pitch, number 3 in the team, a position given to the biggest, toughest boys, to here, a gaunt, waif-like Ben lying weak and sick, his heart doing funny things. Thin Ben who is starving himself to... Damn it, I refuse to let myself go there. The crazy thing is that I could save his life. I could get all that lost weight back on in a matter of weeks, maybe even faster. And the even crazier thing is that it should be so ridiculously easy. It seems grotesque, criminal even, that I am sitting here in England in the 21st century, watching my son fade away from malnutrition, while bucket loads of food are all around us. Huge, massive, obscene mountains of food. Cakes, ice cream, bread, pies, puddings, pizzas, curries. Up the road are 3 enormous supermarkets with shelves piled high with every food imaginable. Down the road are restaurants and takeouts specialising in every cuisine on the planet. Yet my son refuses to eat. Or at least he refuses to eat anything other than the bare minimum needed to keep him alive. I want to punch the wall. I want to kick, scream and shout. I want to get the medical staff to force feed him and insist that he stuffs his face with life-giving food, even pop a funnel down his throat and pour it all into him. Why the heck aren't they doing this? No one appears terribly concerned about the anorexia. In fact, right from the start, no one seems to have treated this as an urgent case. Now, at the end of January 2010, almost 4 months since I first took Ben to see our GP, we are still waiting for treatment. No one seems interested, no one has taken this seriously, and no one has given us any assistance, advice, or support. I feel as if I'm going to faint. Someone must have noticed because they hand me a glass of water. I'm hot 1 minute and ice cold the next, still in the surreal bubble that has become our normal world over the last 6 months or so. I pull myself together and call my husband Paul, who's working about 2 hours' drive away. I don't think there's anything to worry about, but Paul's on his way. It might be a couple of hours before he gets here, but at least he's on his way. I make my way back to Ben, who appears to be in the process of being moved. I get a fleeting sense of relief. Is everything okay? Can we go home now? No, he's being transferred to the other hospital, the one in the city centre, the one with the special cardiac unit. Inside my head, the dread and panic is unbearable, but I hope it doesn't show. See you in a bit, I say with a light-hearted grin as they wheel Ben to the waiting ambulance. I give him a friendly wave, no different, I hope, from the one I'd give him if I was dropping him off at the cinema or a friend's house. I don't want to worry him. I dash to the car park, fishing in my bag for my keys, cursing the other hospital for having some of the worst hospital car parking in the country. I decide to call a cab. They can send a car in 90 minutes. Damn it. Eventually I find a cab that can be with me in 20 minutes. It's the longest 20 minutes of my life. Then it takes another 20 minutes to battle through the rush hour traffic. The entire process takes well over an hour, but it seems so much longer. Please let Ben be okay. That's the end of chapter 1. Please click on the in video link to move on to chapter 2, which is called 6 months earlier, which, as its title suggests, takes us back to 6 months before the hospital incident from chapter 1. It would be really good, meanwhile, if you could like this video and also click to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video. Oh, and don't forget to visit my blog. You'll find the link below. You'll also find a link to my website where you can download PDFs of my blog for free.